This is a Think Live Be production.
3, 2, 1. Fresh start, deep breath, lights go on, no regrets, plans in place.
Hey guys, Patrick here. So we're going to try something a little bit different today. Kathryn went to Family Reunion with Keller Williams about 4 to 6 weeks ago. Each day she went to a bunch of different classes, listened to a bunch of different speakers, and then would go back to the hotel room and record her thoughts from the day, things that she learned. And we compiled all of those clips, and we're going to put it out as today's episode. Just a little warning, the first day Kathryn recorded, she didn't have her ear pods in, so she was recording directly into the mic on the phone. And so the quality isn't the greatest. You can still hear it. It sounds fine. But day 2 and on, it gets a lot better, sounds a lot better. So go ahead and take a listen to all of the compiled clips, and we'll be back next week with the first episode of our brand new season. Okay, thanks.
Reaching higher, aiming true, seeking the best in what I do, building life.
Hi, everyone. I am reporting live from Keller Williams Annual Conference Family Reunion here in Atlanta, Georgia. I am here on my first day. I arrived yesterday late in the afternoon, early evening, and I attended 2 sessions today. So I did a KW talent session in the morning, and then I went to CEO Summit. So the Keller Williams Annual Conference called Family Reunion is this big thing where there are large speeches on a main stage, and then there's breakout sessions, and they kind of have them set up as tracks, so like if you want to learn about listings, you go the listing track, operations track. Obviously AI is a big topic this year. So you go and you basically create your agenda and what you want to learn, and you go listen to other people who are doing things at a high level, and you have models around specific things, and it's all to improve your business. So of course I'm here, and I'm already exhausted at the end of the first day. I think my voice is already going. But I just wanted to, kind of break down some things that I'm learning here while I'm taking this all in, and go through my notes. If you listen to our mega camp, which is our other annual conference from Keller Williams, if you listen to that mega camp episode, it's kind of just me rambling about what I learned. And I think that's what's great, is it's just like stream of consciousness, what I learned, what I took away today, so that hopefully you can learn something without actually being here. Of course, being here is much better. This is not a replacement for attending in person, but just thought I would share a little bit what I learned today and every day through the rest of the sessions. So when I'm recording, just a warning, it's late at night, so I can be a little bit exhausted. But I wanted to talk first about the KW talent session because, first of all, it happened first thing this morning. But also, I'm a member of the KW talent community, and it's just a great place to learn about growing an actual business, and that's what I love about it. So one of the things I took away from that session was about basically, like, if you are scaling your business and adding people, but yet you don't have everything in place, like you don't have systems in place and you don't have the right things going, then you're actually just scaling a problem. And that kind of resonated with me. Although I've definitely felt like over the years, like I've built good systems. I think what happens is they're either living in your head as a single agent, the systems are in your head because you built the business, you've been living it, or you do document it, but you document it for you to use. And then maybe you hire your first person and they're trying to learn from what you've built. And it's not necessarily exactly every single step, or it's piecemeal together, or you think it's covering everything, but you've got it all in your head. So you don't really notice the missing gaps. And so when you grow like that, you're really just scaling the problem. So something else that really stood out to me in this session was that you have to say something to someone 7 times before they remember it. So imagine if you're hiring somebody and you're telling them how to do something and following instructions, like you have to do these things repeatedly. And I think that's where we get stuck when we decide to hire people. It takes a lot of time to train someone. And so you show them maybe once how to do something, explain it, and then kind of let it go. And you don't realize until a few years down the road that it is actually not being done correctly. So last thing from that session was there was so much content there, but I liked what she said. Liz Landry is the director of KW Talent, and she said, labor doesn't equal leverage. Just because you have people doing activities does not mean you have leverage. And so I think that's something to remember when you start to grow a team, whether it's a VA, an executive assistant, a showing partner, it doesn't really matter. If you have people, they should be providing leverage for you to have more time to do other things, not just being there to do things if it's not providing you with extra time. So I attended CEO Summit, and this was a hot ticket. There were only so many seats, and it was at the Tabernacle in Atlanta. And if you've never been there, it's an old church that's been converted to a music venue. And so we were stacked in these really high seats up in the balcony, and sat there for 4.5 hours listening to a couple authors and entrepreneurs speak about business. And it's just conversations about elevating your life and business through, whether it's through health and wellness or your actual business, or even just the way you think and how you look at yourself, and you're being self-aware. So anyways, this year they had the author of Unreasonable Hospitality, Will Guidara, who I actually got this book for Christmas, and I wanted to read the book. I had heard about it, but I didn't actually realize his story. And so he actually got voted, the restaurant that he owned was voted number 1 in the world at one point. And the reason that they earned that title was because they were relentless in the pursuit of excellence, and specifically around hospitality. And so as realtors, we're in the service industry every day. We serve our customers. And so he had a lot of really great information. And I don't know exactly what, I gotta go look that up. I don't know exactly what he had to do with Bear, the TV show. Maybe he was like a writer or somebody who connected with. But if you've seen that show, then you understand what unreasonable hospitality is, because he described some things that he has done at his restaurant that are very similar to some of the things you see on that show. And so maybe he was a consultant on it or something. I will look that up and fact check it. But the point is just that he sat down with his team because he wanted to be the best in the world, right? He was in pursuit of excellence. And he said that, if you believe in something, you have to say it enough times to actually make yourself sick of saying it in order for it to bleed into the culture of your company. And he believes that that daily huddle is the best method, is the best meeting of the week to create culture, is to have some sort of stand-up daily huddle with your team. And one of the things he did was go through, and they had a couple meetings around this where they discovered and went over every single touch point from the moment somebody arrived at the restaurant till they left at the restaurant, so that they could elevate every single one of those experiences. And so, if you think about this in real estate, it's like, what are all of the touch points in our journey with a customer that we can elevate and make an experience that they'll remember and never want to work with anyone else? So that one was a really, really good session that I will go back to those notes and continue to read. And I got the book for Christmas. I haven't yet read it. And so it's next up on my book list. So I will keep you posted on that book as well. So the next speaker at the CEO Summit was the author of the book, Wild Courage. And she talked about some of the principles in that book. And one of the things that stood out to me, and I kind of do this already, but it has been a journey for me to realize this. I've also been in business for going on 20 years. So I've realized some of the things that she said and I do them myself, but I think it is a good reminder and other people need to hear it. So one of the things on her list was called Pull It and Bullet, like BULLET. And basically showing two different emails. And one of them is this long rambling email, and the other one is very succinct, bullet pointed, and to the point. And I think this is something, and I still work on this because look, we have a lot of information we have to give people during the process that we want them to read. And sometimes it's hard to get that into like a really short, brief email, but we still want them to get the information. So it is hard sometimes, but if you can take every email, every communication that you're going to make and bullet point it, make it easy to read and consume, that's succinct to the point, you elevate your level of the way that you're perceived, essentially. And then the other thing was, and this is along the same lines, but tame the octopus is what she called it. And the point of that whole conversation is that a lot of times people get rambly and they ramble on when you ask them a question and they can't succinctly answer it. And they ramble on, and that's what she was referring to as an octopus and all the tentacles that they go in all these different directions. And her point was, when somebody asks you a question or you're having this conversation, like take a moment to pause. Even if you need to write some notes, take a moment to pause and then come back with succinct answers. You will come across more professional, more in power, I shouldn't say in power, but like you will appear to be a higher level of expertise and trustworthiness and professional if you're succinct and to the point. And I say that as I'm rambling on, but you have to understand that my excuse is it's really late at night. I'm trying to recap notes that I just took today. There was a lot of other things from her notes. One of the things that I thought that the last thing I'll leave you with is that the red shoe effect. And this was basically like creating a signature look. Like that's the only way I can describe it. But people perceive people who wear, like, for example, the example she gave was if you wore like red sneakers with a tux to an event, you would stand out and people perceive you as being like a higher level of power, because who else would get away with, wearing something that is unconventional or untraditional. And so having some sort of signature, and I don't think she just meant clothes, but like, what is something that sets you apart, that is your signature look, that has the effect of telling people, I know what I'm doing, I'm in control. So that was a good session as well. There was more, there's more to it. These are just little snippets from my notes to recap for you. So we had another author at the CEO Summit named Valerie Burton. And this is a really, really brief recap because there was a lot of stuff about resilience and how to be happier, how to build resilience, etc. But one thing she said really stuck out. And she said, performance goals are not enough. Like, if you just say, I want to sell 40 houses this year, that's not enough. And I think we all know that. Like, we all know that, like, if I wake up today and then my goal is 40 houses, but it's a bad day, like, just the number, the performance of it is not enough to pull me through that bad day. But so she said, performance goals are not enough. Growth goals get you to the next level. So I think that's important to remember when we're thinking about goals, because in our industry, that's kind of that's the metric of success, is like units or volume, right? And it's because it's easy to track. So don't go out there and not set a unit goal, because it's hard to know if you're on track for all the rest of the goals. That's just me speaking. But I think having a growth goal, making sure that you're and you've connected to what is the reason that I'm selling for 40 units, those are the things that get you to the next level. And growth goals are things that also like to just improve you over time as a better person, a better business owner, etc. So last session of CEO Summit was a guy named Neil Patel, who owns the company NP Digital. And his session was all about AI, and that's such a hot topic right now. It was more than just AI, but it's a hot topic right now. So I'm just going to pull out a couple things. I'm not trying to get too technical with things, but just some important stuff that I noted while he was speaking. You know, we all know like 96% of buyers start their home search online. Google is usually the first place they start. They Google some, real estate in insert city. That's how the search starts for somebody on that journey. And so his point in all of this was that a lot of people use ChatGPT now. And if you're getting into the AI game, ChatGPT is awesome, but don't forget that like a lot of people think that that's the end all be all, but Google is owned by Alphabet and their profit was 116 billion. This is according to him. I have not fact checked this. And when they first introduced AI search on Google, the searches actually increased, their activity increased by 5 billion, I think he said. That's so much more search than ChatGPT. And so don't forget to optimize if you're working on AI and using AI, like don't forget to optimize yourself in the places where there is just so much money and power that it's going to be very challenging for any competitor to actually outbeat those people. I don't know if that's a word, but you get me. And he was also saying that map search on Google is based partially on reviews. So I know we all know reviews are good and important, but just a reminder that map search is actually based on that. So that's important. So he also recommended updating your Google business profile at least once a quarter and making sure you have one. Obviously, is the first step, but you're trying to win that local visibility because when people are searching, they're searching for local information. So it's not just reviews though. So here's the 4 things that I learned today. So relevance. So having your services and locations, that's giving them a clear signal that you're matching what that person is looking for. The distance, so the proximity to the location and where you are does matter. Prominence, that's the reviews, mentions, or authority there. And then reviews influence both rankings and call volume. So are you on Google Business? If you are, like, how can you boost that local visibility? So what can you post to Google once a quarter or more? Like you could certainly post even more. And I think that's probably stuff that what are people searching, right? It's just going to feed into the authority position. If you're posting about specific topics that a buyer would search, like what are the best schools? And no, we can't say what are the best schools, but you get what I'm saying. Like what are the best neighborhoods for this school zone? If you wrote something about that on your Google profile and somebody's searching that, you're going to have more relevance.
Here we go, here we go. Seeking the best, being my best, all by the rest.
Okay, it's day 2 of Family Reunion. And today, well, for me, this is kind of officially day 1 for everybody else. So today was called Social Media Con. And it was just an all-day thing with speakers around social media. And these weren't just any speakers. These were super high level influencers with, millions of followers talking about social media and the importance of it in today's modern world and how to use it to get business. And so I'm just going to kind of, again, just go through some thoughts of the day. And I think one of the big overarching takeaways was that we have to remember that it's not really all about the clicks or like the likes or hearts or followers. It's not really about any of that. Social media is meant to be connection, not clicks. And so when you're doing things to post on social media, is to always remember who are the ones that are on the other side. Like, what is the problem you're looking to help them solve, and who are those people? And every piece of content needs to be with that in mind, instead of how can I make this look cool so that I get more clicks. So for example, if you're not sure who you're posting for, it's probably one of these. They're either clients, referral partners, like other vendor partners, or team members. And so it's just like, who do you want to actually watch, and just focus on one of those groups when you are making it. One of the tips this particular woman shared was to close your eyes and imagine that specific person and then record. A quote that I wrote down from that session was from Ryan Leake, and it said he stopped worrying about making an impression and started worrying about making a difference. And so I think that just goes back to that whole idea of, don't worry about how it looks, or, you want it to look professional to some degree, but it's not about any of that. It's about what the problem for our business, what is the problem that you're solving. So we also heard from the author of the book StoryBrand, Donald Miller, and we actually got a free book, StoryBrand 2.0, I think is what it's called. And so he talked about, if you're not familiar with his concept, it's about the formula for a story. And there's always a character or a hero. There's a problem. The hero meets the guide. The guide gives them a plan, and then calls them to action with a vision of a better future, and explaining how to avoid failure. And it's the formula of every movie, story, everything. There's always a problem. Otherwise, there wouldn't be something to be like interested in if he was just going about his day. Show about nothing, for example. So in storytelling for a brand, we have to think about it in these terms, that the hero is the customer, not us. And that we know we're solving a problem. We're the guide in that problem. We're never, ever the hero. And so you want to always kind of ask questions to them about what do you hate about this house? What do you think about this? It's about them because they're the hero. One of the most powerful parts about, I think, the storytelling formula is the call them to action part, where he was telling a personal story about his own decision that he had to make about something. And his point was that it's okay as the guide to give someone permission to make a decision, because oftentimes that's really all they're waiting for, is for somebody to give them permission. It's not that they can't do something, they want to do something. They're physically able to do something, and they're just kind of stuck. And you're able to call them to action when you're their guide, because you're their trusted resource. So the last thing I'll leave you with the Donald Miller section was that he kind of made a point that the product doesn't win, the value doesn't win, the words win. And he used a couple different political examples as well, that, consumers want low cognitive load. The lower the load of, their cognitive thinking, the more orders take place when it comes to like retail sales. Because most of the time people are going around the world daydreaming. In fact, he said 30% of the time people are just going around daydreaming. And so if something is complicated or complex, they won't make a decision. So you've got to make it really clear, but also simple. It has to be really low cognitive load. So just think about that when you're writing something, trying to get somebody to take action. and follow you? And are you making it easy for them to understand? Okay, so we also heard from Gary Vee, who, if you don't know who that is, he's an internet personality, but beyond that, he's a entrepreneur, billionaire, owns multiple companies. He was a co-founder of the app Rezi, and is a social media expert and media expert. And so we got to hear from him and all of his F-bombs. And actually somebody counted them. I think we heard it was like 86 F-bombs in the presentation, which is not Keller Williams brand, but it was funny. And that's just who he is. And so it is part of the deal when you hire him to do a presentation. But anyways, he's high energy, so he was all over the place, and so are my notes probably. But I really loved what he said. He said a lot of people romanticize the past, fear the future, and then don't execute today. And I just thought that was really powerful. So he said that he would do 51% of his 70 hours a week making marketing content. And he suggested that all agents do this because we are in a media battle. We are in an environment where AI will replace agents who don't use AI and who aren't out there visible to the community and visible in those platforms, those AI search platforms. So there was a lot of talk about, just AI in general. But he was saying that, Gemini pulls from YouTube and YouTube Shorts. And so that's really a good place if you're looking to get into video to put your videos. Like, obviously we know YouTube, but specifically making YouTube Shorts, because he kind of said, he thinks maybe Gemini will have about 40% of the market at some point, because it's Google, right? We all know Gemini is not going away. There's lots of AI players right now, but Gemini is not going to go away. Even if you don't think it's the best one or whatever, it's Google. So then he also, he kind of asked the question, because a lot of people don't really like social media or don't like to video themselves. And so he asked the question, raise your hand, who thinks they're a better communicator in written word? And so some of the audience did. And so he suggested in that case for those people to get on something like Substack and go out and write content. There's more than one way to create content that can then be found through AI. So he said he thinks we have about 5 to 7 years of attention arbitrage, is what he called attention arbitrage for free, because basically knowledge is being commoditized. And so I think he's right. I think we have this small opportunity to go out as real estate agents and make sure you're visible, and doing it for free or very low cost. So, find your platforms that you're going to feel comfortable recording on, like whether it's video or written content, whatever, find your platforms. Now, he was saying you should be on 7 to 8 different platforms and, posting 300 times and stuff like that. But the point is, go out and figure out what's going to work for you, that's going to get found on AI. So if it's not going to be searchable, then that's not necessarily a place to be posting. So Gary Vee was also saying that quantity over quality, you just have to put out more and more stuff so that it can be found, and that you can be the source for, basically become the PR agent or the mayor of your community. So some other things I wrote during the social media con, besides specific technical stuff that's just not good for podcast recording, because we definitely had some technical tips and things for recording video and where to put things and stuff. But that doesn't really read, I think, over a podcast. But another woman that was on stage, and I'll put the actual names of these people in the candy bag or something. But this one woman, I think her name was Chelsea, said that what matters more than how many posts is who you're talking to. So this kind of goes back to that whole thing, the targeting of who's this for. You could post 10 times a day, but if there's no audience for it, or if it's just a sort of vanity posts, then it's not going to resonate. So, and then consistency in engagement. She was really big on engagement because, again, this wasn't meant, the goal of social media was not ever meant to be content, she said. It was connection. The goal of social media was never content, it was connection. And so you got to go back to think about who it is you're trying to reach. What would they be interested in? Then apply the storytelling formula to make it about them as the hero and you as the guide. And then be consistent with engaging with them so that they actually see the content, because you're putting it out there for them. But if you're not engaging with them, the algorithm might make it where they don't actually see it. And so she was suggesting being a super fan of others and actually taking, like, if you're an Instagram, go in there and create your top 50 favorites. And then those 50 favorites are who do you want to be super fans of, to make sure that you see their content so that you can engage with them regularly, so that in turn, they'll see your content. And then she kind of broke down sort of a system. So I really liked that she said small talk leads to big talk. So just like in real life, when you meet somebody, you're going to engage in small talk with them before you would ask them like big questions about their life or goals or things, right? So the same thing works online, is you're going to engage in small talk so that you can build trust to have the bigger talks. And a couple just like tips that I thought she gave were, one is the carousel is the only type of post on Instagram that can be seen 2 times. So it increases the chance of being seen. So that's just a reminder, if you don't already know that about Instagram, that carousel is the best one to be seen. And that's why. She also recommended doing branded series, which I love, because for me in my business, I like to teach and train, as you guys know. And so how can I teach and train my customers? I can actually do a branded series, literally teaching them about some sort of selling tips or buyer tips and give them that information just for free online. So I loved that idea. And she said, another thing that she said everybody should have is some sort of post about how to work with me. Like, how can they reach you? Like, how would they communicate with you to do business with you? What would that look like? And to pin it to the top. And then always remembering to balance your content. You want to make sure that you're in some of it, that you are in fact there, but balancing that personality perspective. And she said, are you showing these 3 things?
Every day. Late nights, heavy eyes, still I fight. Grasp the prize, coffee cold, proof in ink. Every foe makes me rethink, taking the best, leaving the rest. Every day I choose my way.
Okay, so it's Monday. I got in late Friday. So this is day 3. Day 3. So day 3, we kicked off the morning with the vision speech. The vision speech at these conferences is Gary Keller and our chief economist and Jay Papasan and Jason Abrams going over all the all the data around the real estate industry and everything that affects it. And I always kind of nerd out at that stuff because it's the market. It's what dictates what direction we're going in and how our business needs to operate. What strategy we need to take in order to succeed depends on the market that we're in. And so, just some highlights from that speech is that if you're feeling that January had a slower start than normal, that is across the board, I think, what we all kind of feel right now. And they said that that's actually probably largely due to some extreme weather. We all know that there was like half the country was under snow, and I'm freezing cold right now in Atlanta, Georgia. It feels like 17 degrees. outside today and my hands are actually windburned. So that's why. And so they do expect that by the year end, the second half of the year, they expect things to improve. And so a couple other things from the vision speech is just that except during the Great Recession, prices over time really don't go down. So they're expecting about a 2% gain year over year this year. This is also specific to your local market, though. So people might read headlines and see that there's expectation that the market's going to improve, and they're going to hold off on listing their house until later this year. And that could be better for them, but it depends on your local market. So that's just my tip to remind you that it might not be better for them if that's not what's going on in your specific area. So even though overall we're expecting the end of the year to be better than the start of the year, there are still things to keep our eyes on that basically unemployment is trending up, and the time that people are remaining unemployed is long. It's 27 weeks right now. And historically, that's 20 weeks. So that's something to watch. There's also about 1 million less jobs available that are needed in the country. And so that's another thing to keep your eye on, because unemployment does directly correlate with our industry, right? If people don't have jobs or have fear of losing their jobs, they won't buy houses. It makes sense. And the other thing is that 3 of the 5 top growing industries are shrinking. And so that's something to watch. So there's a lot of things that affect all of that. Overall, I think everybody still expects the market to go up about 2%. But that's still, the number of sales is still one of the lowest years that last year and at the last few years have been the lowest number of sales that we've seen in a long time. And so I guess it's only up from here. No, of course, these are the other things to watch, though. If rates don't start to come down, if job unemployment does start to go up, then that 2% might actually be eroded. But again, historically, there really hasn't been another time where prices actually went down, except the Great Recession.
Okay, so Pat might be mad at me because I switched to headphones because I realized that I wasn't recording on headphones. So the sound might be a little different now than the previous few sessions. But anyways, so Family Reunion is really cool because there's different breakout sessions that you can go to, and you look at this whole schedule and you pick out which ones you want to go learn about. It's kind of like building this cool syllabus or agenda for college. And so I nerd out about doing that. There was way too many sessions to choose from, but I did go to 3 sessions. I'll give you a little breakdown of those. One of them was for productivity coaches. But here's the thing with productivity coaching. It's for I'm the productivity coach in my office, but the program is for agents who are trying to either get started in their career, if they're in the mentor portion of that program, or they're trying to break through a ceiling, a cap, or cap consistently. And so I thought it was still worth sharing that just some things that productivity coaches think about when we're talking to agents. And you need to understand, as a newer agent or somebody who's trying to break through a ceiling, you have to want it more than the coach does. We're here to guide you through. And so really sitting down, if you don't have a coach, at least sit down with yourself or somebody like a mentor in your office or something, and sit down and get clarity around what it is you need to do every day to hit your goal and reverse engineer it. That is how you figure out what your day looks like. Because we come into this industry and we have no idea what our job is. We just know we want to make money and it sounds like a cool thing. I get to go look at houses, right? And we don't really know how to get there. And so that's the first thing. If you're new or if you're trying to break through a ceiling, is get clarity around what you need to be doing every day and what your commitment is to that. So if you're kind of stuck, do you understand? These are some things to ask yourself if you don't have a coach. Do you understand why you're stuck? Do you know why you want to achieve the goal that you have? And do you have the capacity? And if not, like, are you willing to go out and find the resources to build it? Okay, so I went to a seller breakout session. This was really good one. I got lots of notes here, but I'll try to just highlight some of the best stuff here. So obviously it was about getting more listings, but specifically motivated sellers. And so there was one agent who does, let's call them seminars, but basically like seller seminars. And he does direct mail and also invites his database to get them to go to this specific event, has them sign up for it through Eventbrite. And he hosts it at the library. But the key here is it's a place where his clientele would go. So the library might not be a fit for you, but his clientele are like people who've maybe been in their houses a long time and they're older and they use the library in his town. And so it's free. It's a place that they would normally go. So it's easy. And it's a public space. So that it kind of feels like the library is hosting this and they put it on their calendar. So free publicity. So they get tons of business from this every year. And they call it a workshop. But some of the key things that I thought were really powerful were that he puts them into a group. There's more to this, but of course I can't go line by line here. They do their presentation and then they break them into groups and they ask them, say kind of groups of 5, and they ask him, what was the one question that you came here to get answered? And of course, inevitably somebody asks about something in the house, like, well, I'm not sure if I need to renovate a bathroom or something like that before I sell my house. And then that's your opportunity to set an appointment because, of course, I would need to see that in order to give you advice on that. So I love this because, again, I like to teach and train, and I'm already trying to implement. I started like a year ago, maybe 2, I don't remember, doing these. They haven't been super well attended, but they also haven't been really purposefully advertised. And that's the difference. Like if you want to do these kinds of things, you have to do something to get people in the door. And he suggested, like, when you first get started, you're going to invite your database. So if you do nothing else, invite your database, ask them to invite some friends. Probably not going to get as many people, but eventually you build it to where you're actually sending mailers. And so he said they do 4,000 mailers. And he said for every 10 people that show up, they have 4 appointments set right away and 6 within a week. That is awesome. So I think this is definitely something if you like to teach. So let me pause for a moment, because what I've realized over my career is that sometimes these ideas sound like, oh, cool. That's great that's a great return. And so I'm going to go start doing this. But there's too many ideas to chase. And if it's not something that you're really passionate about or that you're going to enjoy doing, like, are you going to want to show up to the public library at 7:00 once a week? If not, then don't make this a pillar of your business. But I personally, I don't know about showing up at the library, but I personally love to teach. So I think this sounds like a great way to get in front of more people who have a need, but they're just like, they're looking for answers to questions. They're not necessarily looking for an agent yet. It's what builds this pipeline. So that was the first guy. Thought his info was great. There's this thing called the golden letter. If you haven't heard of this, it's basically sending out letters to people who might have a likelihood of selling. So have they been in their house for a while? Have they owned, do they own a certain amount of equity in it? Things like that. And this is essentially a simple, really basic letter that says, hey, would you sell your house to a client I have? If interested, call this number. And it's really simple. But that particular strategy, I think it's great. In fact, it's so funny, and Patrick will laugh at this, but years ago, before this, because this is a younger guy that's doing this for the last couple of years, and it's kind of blown up as this cool thing to do. But years ago, we had this thing called the pink letter campaign, and it was essentially the exact same thing, but it was like in a little pink envelope, like card shaped, so that they would actually open it because it looked like an invitation or something. But here's the thing is I did that, but I did not do it consistently or scale it up or anything. And so it kind of fizzled out. So here's the thing with like all of the stuff when you go to these conferences, it's like you can't do it all. So got to pick one thing that I'm going to do consistently and then add the next thing, not all at once. And so, if you feel like you can convert at a high level or you're wanting to build that skill, this would be something you could do, because you send out the letters. The letters are simple. That's not that's not like a marketing skill or anything. The skill comes when they call, and they don't necessarily, they're not calling to list with you. So you have to move them from, that conversation into a listing appointment. So you have to practice those scripts and dialogues and how to convert there. But it's still a great way to get people to reach out to you. And who doesn't want to attract more sellers? Another thing that came out of the seller breakout today was just a quick, simple note. But when you take a listing, especially in a market like we're in, that could be slightly declining, you have to prepare people for the realistic expectation. It does not serve you or them to take an overpriced listing and then it just sits and sits and sits, and it never gets reduced in price and it never sells. So you have to set them up with an expectation that you will be coming to them for a price reduction if you need to. And I loved the way this guy explained it, because he said he's explaining it as a tactical strategy. Because listen, okay, we're going to list this house today, but we might get a new competitor in the market tomorrow. And so if that happens, then we'll have to have a tactical strategy to address that. And that would be a price reduction, and that's not how he said it. But my point is, tactical strategy, that's what people want, by the way. I remember having a whole conversation with a seller. It was hilarious, where he was like, what I want from you is strategy. And that's what people want. They want to know that you have a plan if something isn't going exactly as the original plan, right? The original plan is we're going to list it for $400,000. And well, what if you're sitting there in 30, 50, 60 days? What's the plan then? So prepare them in advance. That great. So here we're going to have a tactical strategy. If something like that happens, if a new competitor comes on the market, if we see that the prices of these pending homes actually closed 5% lower than what we thought they were going to, that's what people want, strategy. Okay, I went to a real estate investing breakout session because we own investment property and I like to diversify what sessions I'm going to, so I can get a little mix of everything. I've also gone to these events and themed it out and said, okay, I'm going to go learn just about these things. But this time I kind of broke it up into different categories of my life and business. And one of the quotes that somebody said, and it was a quote that somebody said to him at one point, but it was pretty powerful. So I thought I would share it. Is he was talking to an investor it sounded like he was representing them and buying property. And the guy said, you work for tips. And I was like, wow, that's pretty powerful statement if you really think about it. Like, we work for a percentage on the sales price. We work for tips. The real money, the real wealth is through actually buying the real estate, holding the real estate. And anyways, it was kind of a harsh statement, but I thought it was a powerful one. It obviously affected the guy on the panel to go out and become an investor himself. So I thought that was a great little quote to share with you guys. In that investment breakout session. And I'm sorry I didn't write down everybody's name, so I would give credit where credit was due. But one of the females on the investment panel said that she only buys a property in an area where there's a Starbucks drive-through and a Chick-fil-A, because they do all of the market research to know that there's population growth there. And I think she said in an area where there would be a Starbucks drive-through or Chick-fil-A means the population growth is 20% or more. And so then she knows it's a growing, developing area that's going to be able to rent easily. And I thought that was a great tip, because if you're buying an investment property outside of your area, you're not going to necessarily be the market expert and know which areas are going to rent more easily. So you can let the big corporate companies do the research for you. And a last little note from the investment breakout session, because, this isn't an investment property podcast, but as an investor, I find this really interesting. I want to get more properties. And I've been thinking a lot about flipping. Like, it's a natural thing that Patrick and I would want to do. We renovate properties. We just don't end up selling them. We hold on to them and live in them or rent them out. And what somebody was saying that, to find something today, like, it's hard to find good investment properties today. But what you could look for is something that expired off the market pre-COVID that needs value added. So I don't know how many properties are left. You'd think, like, you'd assume that properties that expired from the market in 2019 before COVID happened, that those people, if they were serious about selling, listed their house after COVID. But that's an assumption. And I'm sure that you could go pull a list and find some. And imagine that that's 6 years ago, 7 years ago now. Those properties probably need value added. And so those could be a great opportunity for flipping and or, getting something, fixing it up and renting it for more than maybe what it's getting now or what it could get. So I thought that was a smart way to look at, where can you find a deal? Like, yeah, I get it. MLS doesn't have the deals right now. So where could you start looking? So the final keynote speaker was Jay Shetty, and you can Google him. But he's a very famous guy, and he talks a lot about mindset. And I've got a lot of notes, but I'm just going to kind of round out a few little things as I wrap up the night. I thought this was interesting. You can't have an anxious thought and be grateful at the same time. I thought that was interesting because I don't know about you guys, but I get very anxious, and I can sometimes, if there's a lot going on, like deals going and maybe there's some difficult people you're working with, that you build up this anxiety and like lives in my chest. And I can just be like, just kind of like on edge sometimes. And, if you practice some sort of gratefulness habit, which, I know there's some people who get up and they write 5 note cards to say thank you, or they make 5 calls to say thank you. Like, the act of that could help you reduce that anxiety. I thought his quote was really interesting to think about. Well, that's the point of those kind of activities, is to help you start the day without all of that pressure on your chest. In the same Jay Shetty keynote, there was a lot of different things that he went over, but one of the quotes that stood with or resonated with me was that we never cancel a meeting with someone else, but we don't even schedule one with ourselves. And it resonated a lot with me. And I don't actually know why, because I'm pretty consistent with meeting with myself on Saturday mornings or Sunday mornings and sitting down and just going through things. But I know a lot of people who don't have any kind of routine to meet with themselves. Or he also could have been meaning like, take care of yourself personally, which that maybe was the part that resonated with me, is that like, I, will wait until the very last minute to get a haircut. I don't schedule things for myself to take care of myself. Like, I have to really be intentional about doing that. But he's right. Like, I would never cancel a meeting with someone else because I feel obligated. Like, if I say I'm going to do something, I feel obligated to be there. But think about that. Like, shouldn't you feel obligated to meet with yourself weekly, to check in with yourself, to check in with your business, to take care of yourself? But we don't. So he suggested scheduling a really small meeting in the morning to determine what you need to make it a great day, like a 5-minute meeting, and then scheduling a meeting in the evening to determine what you did right or wrong. And just 5 minutes, like, it does not need to be this big thing. I used to have this form, and I still do. It's a Google form that pops up in my Slack every evening at about 6:00. And it's like a reminder to check in on how the day went. So some sort of tool like that could really help make the consistent meeting happen. You just can't ignore the notification, though. Like, if you really want to improve yourself and take care of yourself, you can't skip the meeting with yourself. in the Jay Shetty keynote, he had us all stand up and asked us if we were outgoing or reserved, and were we task people or people. And we had to move around the room, and it was quite chaotic. But what he was really describing are like the DISC personality assessment, the DISC. And I love personality assessments because I think it helps me better understand myself. So that's important, but also it helps understand how to work with other people, which is what we do on a daily basis. And so to better serve our clients and customers and deal with other co-op agents, it really helps to understand how to deal with people and their different personality types. But his was a little bit of a different perspective than the DISC. So if he was basically saying, if you're outgoing, but like you enjoyed tasks rather than people, but you're outgoing, then you are driven to make things happen. And so if you were dealing with somebody who seemed outgoing, but was a task person, you would talk to them about deadlines. If they were outgoing and a people person, then you're going to make more eye contact and give them energy. They want to be excited to work with you. And then if you're dealing with somebody who seems kind of reserved and task driven, then you want to make sure you've got things right, and you're going to have to sell them on the specifics. And if you're dealing with somebody who's reserved, but still more of a people person, then they're really those stable, that's the high S. They want to feel heard and cared about. So in listening to that, I think you can generally identify if somebody is reserved or outgoing pretty quickly. Whether or not they're task or people oriented, you could probably give them some sort of activity to do before you meet with them to determine if they're a task person. And if they don't do the activity, then they probably aren't. Because like if you gave them a checklist to do and they're a task person, they're probably going to do the checklist. So I just think this really helps you like understand how to deal with people. Like if you go into a room and you know that they're outgoing, that you can tell immediately in talking with them on the phone, and then they didn't do the activity you asked them to do. They're like, oh no, I didn't have time. I was too busy, talking with my friends. Then you know that you're going to have to bring the energy because they're going to want to be excited to work with you. So if you could just kind of put those 4 categories to work in your business when you're working with people, you can really make sure that you're tailoring your conversation to them and their needs. So the last session I went to before I went to the top individual masterminds that I'm super excited to be a part of this year. It was called the Busyness Trap, and it was about time management. And of course, you can imagine I was there because this season we're talking about time and how important it is and how big it's our biggest asset. And so it was taught by Jay Papasan, who's the co-author of The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, The One Thing. And so I wanted to just pop out a few things here. For most of us, it's really not a capacity problem. Like we all walk around saying that we don't have enough time, but it really just comes down to clarity. And you have the capacity to do the things that are most important. My coach has told me that before. And it's true. It's true. Every day you choose to do all the other little things that are not that important or that you could offer or leverage to somebody else, but you do them anyways because maybe you want to feel busy. I'm saying this to myself. So he actually had us do an exercise where we wrote down like all the typical things we do in a week. And then we ranked them in order with a dollar amount. And so once you really put a dollar amount next to something that you're working on, I think that brings some great clarity around whether or not that's a job you should be doing. So I thought that was a really good take on how to do, so you'd write out your to-dos, the things you would normally do. And a lot of times people say, now rank them in order of what's most important, making a success list. But I really liked this idea of putting a dollar amount beside it, really determining how much is this worth and why am I working on $10 an hour activity? My last session from the Busyness Trap, my last notes here were about not getting stuck in the competency trap. And he said, it will take 30 times for you to teach someone to do something 60% to the level of 60% of what you can do. But we get stuck thinking about an hour today. And so we end up spending 52 hours instead of saving 22. I don't know what that math is exactly in my notes, but I think the general consensus is we're so worried about spending the hour today on teaching someone that we don't realize how many hours it's saving us in the future. And I know I get stuck there a lot because I'm like, I'm busy. I don't have time to sit here and train this person. So I'll just do it today instead. But then over time, they never learn how to take it off your plate.
Fall down, get back up, keep on reaching, don't give up. Step by step, nothing less. This is how I seek the best.
This has been a Think, Live, Be production.